Welcome to the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. Today, we are going to talk more about why certain athletes aren't getting faster. We're going to dig directly into the training they're doing and see if we can find anything and suggest how they can change their training. Sounds good?
Yes.
Martin said after the last podcast, he said, I thought your last podcast on how to raise your FTP was the best podcast you've done. It was so relevant to me. I found it very useful that you looked at the results of a typical user versus their effort. I would love to see more of these types of analyses. It's neat to hear from pros, but they're so he says unreliable. I think he means unrelatable. So, so my question, can you do more podcasts like this? Most recent podcasts. Thank you, Martin. And yeah, Matthew. And by the way, tons of you reached out. Dropped your name down in the comments and like your TrainerRoad username down in the comments. I think that's secure, right, Nate?
Mm-hmm.
Drop your TrainerRoad username down there below if you want us to review your account. Put it in the YouTube comments or put it in Spotify comments if you're listening on there. If you're not listening or consuming on one of those platforms, we recommend you do. That way you can actually see what we're doing. On Spotify, you can just flip your phone sideways and you can see what we're actually talking about. It's pretty cool. Okay, Matthew asks, if Jonathan needs a case study on an athlete who has been stagnating at an FTP for quite a while, I'm happy to allow him to use my account data. I'd love to get any tips he and the team might have. And when he says stagnating for a while, maybe I'll go over like the...
I'm the team.
Hey, team. I'm going to go over the FTP history so then people can understand. And for us, it's kind of like, pre-AD, like AD and BC sort of a thing. Like with AI FTP detection at that point, when we have those figures, we know that it's like a reliable one instead of somebody just making it say 350. So when we look back at AI FTP detection with Matthew, in this case, it was at 275 watts is where they started it. And since then, that was in 2022, they've had a high of 286 watts. Then they've also had a low of down to 275 watts. And they've been bouncing around in between then. So Nate, there's a handful of things that we've noted on Matthew's account and some things that we have notes on in terms of takeaways for all of us. But what do you see first? What do you want to talk about first?
Yeah, let's get an overall, kind of see their career over time. And in here, for those on the podcast, this last 2024 between March and October, November, they were doing a lot of riding with, I see a 6-week average high of 254 of TSS. 600 to 700.
Yeah, it's now 612. Yeah, is what they're carrying per week.
Yeah, but that's all from almost all 90% plus from outside riding. And what I also see is not a lot of recovery in there. It's kind of like stayed elevated. There's a little bit earlier on in May.
And not just outside, probably like a good indication, unstructured riding above all. There's no intent behind it.
And we'll check out their earlier on too, but between December and March, they took time off. And then if we go back a little more, they did have a stretch of structured indoor riding. And their FTP went from, 285? Or no, after they took a break, and they did 278, then they went to 282, then they went to 286 over about 3 months. So 8 watt improvement over 3 months, but I'm going to say that too, that wasn't a TrainerRoad plan. That was at athlete picking workouts, but you can see like the return on FTP there, but also their FTP hasn't really broken free of that. And so then it was, this athlete's in Canada, April started, they rode outside and, they really upped the TSS, but we don't see any more FTP changes, and I'm guessing they didn't have it. So let's go look at a week to give an example of what this athlete is doing. This is a good one. I checked this out before. This is a 11-hour week with 754 TSS, 340 kilometers.
Oh.
That's a lot of riding.
That's a big week.
And if we look at Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they rode, and Saturday and Sunday. So they took Monday and Friday off. And let's look at each one of those days. Tuesday, it almost looks like they're trying to hold kind of sweet spot, but there's a lot of up and down. So this was kind of probably like some kind of tempo ride. If we go into the details of this, what we're going to see is the time and zone.
Looks like a earthquake graph.
Yeah. And the time and zone, they had 11 minutes coasting, 15 minutes active recovery, 23 endurance, 21 tempo, 13 sweet spot, 17 threshold, 12 VO2 max, 7 anaerobic. So they almost like evenly distributed. You look at these percentages, but they just hit everything a little bit, which is kind of like what we've talked about for years on this podcast of having the unstructured. It adds a lot of TSS. It's 0.85 for 2 hours ride.
This is the gray zone. Like, and a lot of people talk about what the gray zone is. And this is it, where like it kind of averages out to be around that sweet spot intensity. But in reality, you aren't actually spending the majority of your time or any sort of extended or consistent period of time in that zone to stress it in a meaningful way.
You might think that 0.85 IF means, hey, I hit sweet spot, which would be like 0.85 of the lower end of it of sweet spot. But you didn't.
You didn't.
Yeah,
no,
you didn't.
No. It's all about getting that. The changes happen when you spend a consistent amount of time, an uninterrupted amount of time in a zone, and then you can rest. Then you can repeat that repeatedly when you have enough rest in between intervals, right? That's the whole theory of interval training.
So we had a 2-hour ride on Tuesday. That was 0.85. On Wednesday, we have a 2-hour ride with an IF of 0.85. And it's the same look of kind of like, scribbling on a graph with a little bit of a climb in there. And pretty much the same thing with 163 TSS. And then that triggered a yellow day. On Thursday, you did a 2-hour ride at 143 TSS. So basically you did 148, 163, 143. And the IF on that Thursday, 0.84.
And if the graph looks similar, like a bit less maybe than the previous day in terms of intensity, but it's noisy. It's not intentional.
Yeah. So those are 3 rides that probably made you really tired, but probably didn't put a lot of like fitness in the piggy bank of fitness. And then triggered a yellow day. That was a yellow day itself. You got another yellow day.
Sorry. You just mentioned really fatigue is not productive inherently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah, you're right. Because you can be tired on a ride, just as tired from 2 different rides, and one can push you forward and one cannot.
Yes, totally. I can go to the gym not knowing anything about what I'm doing in the gym, and I could swing around a lot of weights and do a lot of crazy things and leave exhausted, but that isn't going to drive any sort of meaningful change in my body.
And I think people have seen that when you go from unstructured riding to interval training, you feel that change, and you can even be less tired and get faster. So Saturday, you did an hour 42 at 82 TSS, and it looks like this is more of an endurance ride, 0.7 IF. It's better. Let's look at the details of this one. You still had, you had 20 minutes coasting, 31-minute active recovery, 19-minute of endurance. So if you add those together, about 50% of your ride was endurance or active recovery. But then you had, 8 minutes of tempo, 4 minutes of sweet spot, 6 minutes of threshold, 5 minutes of VO2 max, and 6 minutes of anaerobic, especially that 6 minutes of anaerobic. Those add up. And John, you do outdoor workouts. Can you show us?
Yeah, let's look at this one. So this right here is a 90-minute workout, low pike.
That's crazy.
And you can see it on screen now, and we'll have this up so then people can see it. Let's look at the time and zone on this one. So this is outside. This is, as you can see, like a not insignificant amount of elevation change too that's going on within all that. So just looking at percentages, I have basically 75% in endurance, 24% in active recovery, and then 1% in coasting.
That's almost 100% is in active recovery and endurance.
That's right. Aside from that, there's a couple spots where it was a roundabout where I had to get into position. Aside from that, I'm not sure that there would be any sort of surging outside of it. Now, it's hard to do this. It takes like a lot of time getting used to the ability to kind of feel what a power target feels like and hold on to it. But man, if you could do that, what would happen is you would avoid so much fatigue that even comes with a ride where you did a better job here, but you still accumulated a lot of strain on your body in ways that just wasn't necessary because it wasn't supposed to be it shouldn't have been a hard ride.
2 for John's ride, he had that almost 100% in those active recovery endurance zones. His tempo was 16 seconds. His sweet spot was 5 seconds. Threshold was 6. VO2 max was 3 seconds and anaerobic was 0. Compared to this athlete, VO2 max was 5.5. Anaerobic was almost 7 minutes. And it looks like too, at the end of your endurance ride right here, like you got a little spicy, I think, compared to previous time periods. And, I think that happens where we talked about at the end of the ride, you say, I want to be tired or else it's not worth it.
Yeah, that's what we build into our minds. We think that if we're not completely worked, it's not helpful. This is something actually, you just mentioned something that's interesting. A lot of people when they are riding home to their house, they have their favorite KOMs. I was talking about this the other day with Keegan. Everybody, by the way, if you use Strava, you should have the protection zone on. You can add that. So then like the start and end of your rides or like close to your address is hidden. Please do that. I had podcast listeners come to my door and knock to go on a ride once.
Really?
Yeah, no joke. Yeah, that was when we added the zone on. So add that on there. And then the other benefit that happens is it doesn't allow you to compete for KOMs around your house. And I know that sounds like a bad thing, but I think it's actually a good thing because I see a lot of riders push hard at the end of that ride because, again, like you said, Nate, like they may not feel completely tired.
Mm-hmm.
So they feel like they want to get something out. And then there's always that KOM to chase at the end. Just knowing that they're not on the table for me really helps. Like I know that, no, I just cruise back to the house. Small little thing, but might help you.
So we're still in the same week. On Sunday, they did a 3-hour ride, 218 TSS, 0.83 IF. So still that like, this is a hard ride and the time and zone is all over the place. And the title is Red Bull, a wee bit crispy, which, it lines up with the yellow days and riding on the yellow day. And I love when it does that.
You could feel it, Matthew. Yeah. Like you knew it at this point.
So that's this week. I mean, I'm sure it was fun, but this week could be, if your goal is to raise your FTP, changing some of this TSS to structure, in structure outdoors if you want, or indoors, and soon on Zwift, which we're going to be pushing workouts to them. You're going to have to balance it, right? You can have your let's see, how do we say this?
There's this benefit, like all of us in our minds, we want to just be able to do enough training to be able to maintain and then enjoy the rides. Because then that way, like really, if you just want to enjoy riding, because that's why we train, right? Like do a couple structured workouts a week. You're going to maintain your fitness probably, unless you're a super high level athlete. You're probably going to maintain your fitness and just be able to punch and hang in and have fun on the group rides, do whatever else. But it's hard to have your cake and eat it too, because you can't say, but I also want my FTP to go up. Because if you do want your FTP to go up, you do have to you have to cut back on the unstructured riding. And that might be why you train, but it's okay. I think that a lot of us, and man, it just happens like, there's a group ride one day and then your friends always go riding on Tuesday. And then there's other people, they have like Tuesday.
Local crit series.
Exactly, on Wednesday. Yeah. And then before you know it, you're doing all these really fun things, but then riding actually stops being fun after not too long because you're just cracked.
Yeah.
So you have to tailor it back. You have to sit back and take a look at it and say, okay, I'm going to put in structured focus time and it's going to deliver benefits in specific ways for me later on.
So now I want to go to October 1st. And this is just a ride that some hill repeats happened. And it looks like it could be like interval training, but I'm going to show you why this is kind of, we talked about last week, this is the kind of interval training we don't want to see. And then John, hopefully could see some of your outdoor interval training.
Absolutely.
So if you just look at the shape of this, you can see this downward line where they did 5 hill repeats, starting VO2 max at like 117%. And they went down every interval, but the last went down in power. And if with TrainerRoad, what you can do is add interval. Let's see, I'll do repeat 1. So what I'm doing now is I'm just making little sections so I can review them. Repeat 2. And if you did a structured outdoor ride where you put your Garmin, these would automatically be made for you.
It's handy.
Yeah. And you actually put the lap button too. Yeah. That actually happens too.
Yeah, if you want to do that manually, you hit the lap button, TrainerRoad picks it up. It's just really handy because on your Hammerhead, Wahoo, or Garmin, it'll take care of it for you and you never have to think about it, which is, pretty nice to have. And
I could have zoomed in here too. If I wanted to, I could have zoomed in and really got the intervals at the right time. I actually nailed that one. I can go repeat 5. Okay. So now if I come down and look at the intervals, at the repeats, I was in here earlier. I created an interval here, but you can see that for the normalized power, the first one's 343, second's 310, third's 305, fourth is 287, and then it kicks up at 310. And what we want to see is more of a even power distribution in the interval itself. On these ones, you kind of kick up at the very beginning, and then it goes down, you kick up at the end, and each interval being equal.
That's right.
Yeah. And John, so show us some stuff that you've done outside.
Yeah. So here's like an example of a threshold workout, Star King.
This is so good.
One.
This is better than most people.
Yes, I'm a robot with it. I have special skills with hitting targets outside. This is on a hill and it's able to be repeated. But here's the cool thing. So let's look at this. This was supposed to be a threshold workout, right? And that was the main goal. It was supposed to be an hour long. We got in the workout right there within an hour, roughly, and then it had the cool down that I had thereafter coming down the climb. So if you look at how much time I spent, this was supposed to be, I believe Star King is we can actually see how long. Yeah, I believe it's 3x15s.
At threshold?
Yeah, or 3x12, forgive me, 3x12 at threshold. And if you look at the time that I spent in threshold, I spent 25 minutes and 6 seconds, and that was because there was a warm-up interval. So it's almost directly on the money. Then if you look at the time that I spent in VO2 max, it was right on the fringe. Those ones are high. The 12-minute ones are high. So I had 9 minutes and 22 seconds just tipping into there. But boy, look at the rest of it. It's so focused in on threshold. And that's what it should be. Like if you're going out and you're going to go and do intervals, the point isn't to end up with an average that ends up roughly aligning with this, because you can see that like an average might look like VO2 max on some of those, might look like threshold on others, but in reality, you didn't spend any continuous time there. So you got to stress it for like a considerable amount of time or some sort of significant amount of time uninterrupted, just like that.
Yep. Okay, so now let's look at what the athlete's doing. And they added a TrainerRoad plan, and they added the rolling road race. So this is great. And their volume right now, it's not mid or low, but they're training 6 days a week. And it's not mid or low because we don't use those terms anymore. With Plan Builder version 2, it gives you much more fine-grained control about how much volume you're doing in the week. And this athlete was doing an hour on Tuesday. I'm getting ahead of myself. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, interval days. Wednesday is a very easy endurance day, and the 8th is a bit longer endurance day. And this athlete has an hour on Tuesday, hour on Wednesday, that easy day, hour on Thursday. Saturday, that interval is 90 minutes, and on Sunday, it's 2 hours.
And Monday and Friday should be off, according to the training plan.
Those should be rest days. So 5 days a week, not 6 days a week. And if we come into the training plan, we can hit this edit button. And even in your middle of a training plan, Plan Builder will analyze your plan. And based on your training approach, what this athlete has demanding, it will suggest a volume for you. I wish we had a little like, this is what your volume was and is, but we can add that later. And we're actually suggesting for this athlete more volume, where on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, we're adding half an hour.
So on the hard days.
Yep, on the hard days. So they're 90, 2 hours. And then the Wednesday easy ride is actually dropping to 30 minutes. Easy days a little easier, hard days a little bit harder. If you go back to the calendar and we look at some of these weeks that they're executing, you can see it probably right now on the stream
if
for
you're
the podcast listeners.
You get it.
But on those rest days, what they're doing is rowing for about 20 minutes and then doing about 20 to 30 minutes of weight training on your rest day.
That doesn't sound restful.
Yeah. And if you look in here at the row, their heart rate is right around 150, which if you look at the previous day sweet spot interval, during the interval, their heart rate's like around 150.
So, yeah, I mean, a 20-minute nonstop sweet spot-ish effort. Clearly, it's different on the body, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time,
fatigue.
The fatigue. Yeah, exactly right. When a day when you should be resting, you're adding that in, and then you're doing strength training on top of that.
Yeah. And then on the strength training, we don't know what your sets are. And I just want to show this feature. If you click here in the edit button, you can add like sets about what you did. And if you choose lower body versus upper body, full body core, we give different amount of training stress to impact your cycling workouts and fatigue for red light, green light. So that's if you could put that information in after you do your strength training, upload it, that would be great because we can better change your training plan. So for this athlete, I think I would first I would drop the rowing, right? You're doing plenty of cardio, up the volume for what we suggested, drop the rowing, and then the weight training, that's fine, but I would move it to actually on the Tuesday, Thursday after your interval training.
And I know that sounds crazy, right? To do it on the harder days, but it's you don't want to take away your rest because that's when you're going to be adapting and getting stronger. And right now, you're likely your body is not adapting to the training that it did the day before as well as it could, because you're adding in extra stuff. And, it's basically, if somebody has a task and then suddenly you're like, hey, here's 7 more tasks that you need to deal with, they're not going to be able to perform the original one quite as well.
Mm-hmm.
And your body is the same way, in the sense that it's trying to recover. And then you're like, hey, deal with this rowing, deal with this strength training. It can't get the work done. So it sounds counterintuitive, and here's the thing. Let's just say adding in the strength training on your Saturday after your hard intervals, let's just say it makes the next day yellow. That's not the worst thing in the world. That's your endurance day that was going to be 2 hours, and now it's probably going to be 90 minutes. And that's what it would recommend, most likely, in the case of adapting it to a yellow day.
Yeah, that might be the day you have more time.
Yeah, it's like minimal interruption to the training, and you're not missing any sort of high quality interval work as a result of that.
On the strength training too, I would do upper body only. You have 5 other days of legs. Stacking extra leg strength training there would be really hard. What I do like on this is the weight training is short. You do have duration. I think you record as like a Garmin or something. And I'd keep it to like 6 sets or something. If you listen to another podcast we did before about weight training, I get some advice in there.
Mm-hmm. We'll link to that episode down below.
Cool. Only upper body. And I know there's, like, we've talked about fears of AMPK and mTOR signaling in the body and how they might conflict. It seems like in the literature that's not a big of an issue. It's like a mechanism thing that doesn't really play out in outcome. You can space those out too if you want. And also AMPK and mTOR can express differently in like different parts of your body and muscles. So you're not going to be doing legs and doing squats after this. I wouldn't worry about it. And then what that does is if you stack the strength training on the Tuesday, Thursday, is you have Monday rest, Wednesday, a 30-minute easy ride, and you can drop that too if you're fatigued.
That's the first one to go, right?
Friday rest, right? So you got 3 rest or really easy days, so you can hit that 90 minutes, 2 hours, and the other days a lot better.
And here's the cool thing. So let's just say if you're hearing that and you're thinking, well, then it's just going to make like those hard days super easy. That's great, number one. But number two, that'll be reflected. Like you'll hit the targets, and then afterward you'll give the survey response, and maybe that threshold workout, instead of being hard or very hard, that threshold workout felt moderate. TrainerRoad knows how to look at that and say, okay, like we can increase their ramp rate here, give them harder workouts sooner in their training plan. And as a result, it's just going to make it so that you're getting faster in the ways that are more meaningful to you.
And this athlete's at 3.72 watts per kilo. That's like, that's getting to the time that you kind of have to like change the way you work out to get into that 4.
Gonna have to start making sacrifices there too. You know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice some of the group riding or some of the just whatever riding. I need to add in something that's a bit more intentional and more structured in order to make the change happen. That's a lot tougher. And when you're looking at this athlete and how they compare to the rest, to put that in context, a lot of you are listening to this and you might not have to worry about this low-hanging fruit. The principles are certainly relevant, but to put that in context, they're pretty far up that curve on the bell curve, right?
Yeah, I went to our watt per kilogram calculator. I just put in any weight in FTP, but 4 watts per kilo for a man, you're in the 92nd percentile already. And getting up there, you're getting really, really like at the fine point. And to be the top 10% of athletes, and this is TrainerRoad athletes, so even better, you're going to have to put in some structure.
Yeah, that's right. Some key things that I'm seeing. So recapping on this. Number one, you can do more volume on the hard days. That we were talking about that, that's 60 minutes to 90 minutes is what it's recommending. That may not seem like a lot, but that extra 30 minutes that you get, last night I had 3x20 sweet spot. After the second interval, I had to pee really bad, got off the bike, went to go pee. And instantly in my mind, I smelled really delicious dinner. And I was like, ooh, it sounds like nice to just stop right now. And in my mind, I thought, wow, this is only 30 minutes longer and I'm getting a whole other interval, a whole other 20-minute interval. So don't think that, just adding 30 minutes on those hard interval days, that's not the same as when I was carrying like a 600 weekly average TSS over the summer with all that unstructured riding. It will actually have a bigger impact, positive impact than all of that would. And that's actually shown in the data historically. You can see that when you did structured work around 300 TSS per week, when you were averaging that, you maintained. And then when you added it up and you really did a ton of outdoor riding, it didn't actually improve. And if anything, it dropped. Whereas when you do more structured training, it tends to go up. So Don't take for granted just making those 60-minute workouts, 90-minute workouts, because it gives you so many more like seconds in that zone that's actually going to drive that sort of change. So hard days harder, easy days easier. In other words, and stack that strength training on the hard days instead of filling in your rest days. There's a direct correlation on your account between when you do more unstructured training and FTP stagnation, whereas there's also a correlation when you do more structured training, FTP improvement. So that's something that's key to keep in mind.
I'm sorry, Martin, to keep calling you this athlete. Martin, too, when you...
Matthew, yeah.
Is it Matthew?
Matthew,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
Double sorry, Matthew.
Martin submitted the first question and then Matthew.
Got it. When it does get warmer in Canada and you do go outside, I would add, try to do some of those intervals like John did outside. I know you could still do some of that other riding, but just know it's going to take away from your gains.
Yep, absolutely. And then I think the other thing that I would mention is just the fact that when you are doing those outside rides, like if they're easy, again, make sure that they're all within zone 1 and zone 2. And minimize the seconds that you spend, like count the seconds. And when you're done with the ride, look at the seconds and view those as something you need to drop down. And then if you're doing just those unstructured rides, one of the rides that we were looking at on your account, I thought it was just a ride. So I clicked into it because it had a 0.85 IF. And then I looked at it and I think it was a race. But if I look at all your other just normal weekly rides that you do, it's also 0.85 IF. And the graph looked very similar, like very noisy. So make sure that when you're doing those unstructured rides, if that's the majority of your week, you're not going in intentionally into the majority of your training time. So don't expect any specific outcome. If you have specific input into your training, then you'll get a more specific outcome.
What if we made a feature that like shamed people? Just kidding. But I mean, you could.
This what we're doing right now. No,
like junk drawer ride detected.
Yeah.
Just to to get that, because you're saying like look at the time and zone and stuff, and I was thinking that'd be nice if it was just automated to tell you kind of like that was actually an endurance ride or that was actually not an endurance ride. That was like because you might think that your outcome is one thing. Totally. And you don't go look, and then you don't realize, oh man, I really was surging up those little short hills, and I actually had like 8 minutes of VO2 max in there.
Classic example is anything with like a big climb and a descent. And then if you look at like your average power afterward, you're like, oh, I did 50% FTP. And it's like, well, you coasted for so much time,
Yeah.
It definitely changes.
If you want to be shamed, comment below.
That's right. Let us know.
See if you want to add that feature.
This has been awesome, Matthew. Hopefully it's been helpful. And those takeaways apply to everybody here listening. So more structure tends to correlate with more improvement across the board in FTP. It's hard to have your cake and eat it too, though. So keep that in mind. If you do want to see improvements in FTP, then you do need to do more structured training than unstructured training. And that's just a simple thing that you'll have to decide. Strength training on your hard days and make your easy days easy. If you do those things, I think that, Matthew, you'll get unstuck. And I think that you'll finally break through that 285 threshold and maybe get into the 290 club. It'd be pretty cool.
300.
Oh, there we are. Okay, let's go into this question from Ty. Ty says, hey guys, love your show. I have a quick question about early morning trainer workouts. And it's worth noting that Ty is not a TrainerRoad athlete, so doesn't have a TrainerRoad account, doesn't use TrainerRoad. My wife and I have very busy schedules with work and our 2 young kids. Most of my weekday training has to be done on the trainer around 5 to 5:15 a.m.
Ooh,
it's hard. It's so hard.
Yeah.
I've tried so many times and I still have hope that eventually I'll become that person, but it's really hard. I just started an 8-week FTP builder program. And again, this isn't TrainerRoad. Is it reasonable to decrease my FTP, and it says FTP in quotes, for early morning high intensity workouts? I just did a 3 by 10 minute workout and it was either decrease the wattage or likely fail the workout. Maybe my body will adapt over the next few weeks to the early morning intensity. And for more info, and there's a lot of, so I have thoughts on that first part, but then the more info section, there's also a lot of things here that we could probably optimize. I wake up at 5, immediately slam water, salt, electrolytes. If you're having salt and just use electrolytes. I don't know if they're the same thing there, but eat a protein pancake, oats, eggs, and cottage cheese, and then drink a coffee. I'm on the bike around 5:15 to 5:25. So he wakes up at 5, and then he has that protein heavy and fat rich breakfast in 15 minutes, and he gets directly on the bike. Obviously, this is not an ideal prep for peak performance, but this is really my only reliable time to train, and getting up earlier to eat would wreak havoc on my recovery. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I think so. We've both experienced this where early morning workouts are harder for us. Some people it's not, right?
Yep.
And you can only do what you can do. But I think the first low-hanging fruit would be the breakfast.
Yeah.
The protein pancakes are oats, eggs, and cottage cheese. Like you said, protein, fat in the eggs, cottage cheese. Don't know if it's fat-free or not. You're going to want carbs and simple sugars. And this is great. You could be like, you're eating these about 20 minutes before the ride. So what I really like is cinnamon raisin toast with honey.
Yeah.
Have like 2 of those with your coffee. That caffeine will help improvement too. I bet that alone will change the outcome of those 3x10. I bet those are threshold if it's an FTP builder program. And it's probably on Zwift, I'm guessing.
Yeah, they use that verbiage at least in their plans. Yep.
Also, you could use coming up very soon. TrainerRoad is going to push workouts to Zwift. You could sign up for our program, and we could give you, the correct workout. And if you are having problems with it, we will adjust the workout quickly so that you can do it, and then we'll step you through progressively to get stronger. So rather than changing your FTP, it's more about the percentage of FTP you're riding and the duration. And and the time between intervals. It's like this really complex thing. It's more than just my FTP is 250 today, but I'm going to roll in 247 to get this done.
Yeah. That's not a great approach because then the rest of your training is also compromised. And if you change it in the morning and then change it back, you're just going to be changing things around and not really doing
the best TSS and that,
it's super complicated.
For different times of the day. I have different FTPs for different times of the day.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why we've built out TrainerRoad to be what it is. So then that way, when you do that workout and then you tell TrainerRoad, you say, that was all out. I couldn't finish that one, or I struggled through that one, whatever it might be. When you say that, it analyzes your performance, then gets your subjective feedback. And then at that point, it's like, oh, you can still do threshold work. It's just going to give you the right workout that you need that's actually adjusted for your circumstances. This is something that's really important, I think, for athletes to recognize. The fact that if you train at 5 a.m, that's all the time that you have to train, then that's okay. And you shouldn't view that as like, I need to drop or change my FTP. That just might mean that your threshold workouts don't need to be as hard as they would be if you were a person that trained in the afternoon or something. Then again, it might all be easy for somebody listening to this. It's like that annoying early workout, everything's easy for them person. But if you're in this situation where you feel like your work is compromised, maybe it's the other way. You have a really stressful work or job, you're on your feet all day, and then you have to train after that, and that's the only time that you have to train. Same thing. You don't have to change your FTP. You don't have to compromise the quality of your training. You just need something that's able to understand that by analyzing it and then be able to give you the workouts.
And Ty, good on you for kids and stuff. You're putting this early in the day when everyone's asleep. That's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people can do it. What I'd also recommend is during your ride, I would drink a sports drink because you've been fasting since the night before. I don't know when you ate your last meal. Another one is have a more carb heavy dinner or late night meal before you do your intense interval day the next day. I've noticed a huge change on that. I've
Massive.
never done
it's huge. And that's the biggest mistake that I make frequently. I always lean toward this, and we'll talk about this in a little bit here, but like salads for dinner sort of a thing. And while I have used that to get positive body composition shifts away from fat more to lean mass, I've also had more failed workouts from trying that than I think any other thing that comes up. It's really tricky. The night before, don't feel bad when you pack yourself full of carbs if you're training at 10 in the morning. If you're training at 5 in the morning, I view it as a necessity. You need to be able to do that. And what Nate said is we compartmentalize everything so often to I need to get food in before I get on the bike. In reality, if you because a lot of you are probably listening to this and think there's no way I could eat all that in the morning and then get on the bike, that's okay. Like Nate said, if it's just taking in some toast with some honey, if it's just taking in a gel and a drink mix, that's okay too.
Better than nothing.
And then when you get on that bike, just continually take in carbs. Otherwise you're going to go into that workout depleted, do the workout, deplete yourself even further, and then you are going to have a heck of a morning at work or anything else. It's so amazing how much life changes when you aren't depleted.
Yeah. When you do an intense ride, or any ride, when you're fasted, the recovery is longer too, and your muscles are more sore, and it's harder to get back. So that, I bet you at least half of this is going to be just the fueling ahead of time and making sure the short term, your liver glycogen's up, and the longer the night before, getting your muscles stored with glycogen.
You also probably don't need electrolytes in the morning like that to the degree of pointing it out as a specific thing that you want to take in instantly. Chances are you probably have enough sodium in your system from what you got. And then if you're taking in any sort of like a cycling specific high carb drink mix, if it's Marten, it won't have sodium, but if it's the other ones, it should have sodium. And you're probably getting enough through there.
Yeah.
So the electrolytes aren't going to make the workout feel easier in this case, especially if it's just, a 60 or 90 minute workout or anything less than that.
Yeah. They might be worried that they're dehydrated, but drinking the sports drink too during it, I don't think you need to like slam it 20 minutes before, and that'll make the workout inherently easier. And then I would have your protein pancake afterwards. That'd be great. And if you can eat some more carbs, do, but you kind of like, if you think of that as one meal, you kind of put your carbs earlier before and your protein afterwards.
That's right.
And you kind of been increasing the carbs as you rode. Again, we're big carb fans. So I would do it afterwards too, depending on, I'd actually measure it out, just figure out how much, but that you could still have those pancakes. And the coffee, that's great too. Caffeine lowers the perceived effort of rides. That's one of the key things. That's one of the benefits of doing an earlier ride is to be able to have caffeine and like make it way easier. And you're super sensitive to caffeine.
Yes, I am. I take like 50 milligrams and I'm ripping. And you can't do that. If you're training at 6 p.m., you can't take caffeine, and it's going to make it a lot tougher.
I just had that last night. I drank iced coffee at like 4 p.m. and I was up so many times at night. I was just not tired. It was worst. Bad. Yeah. And then the next day is hard. And
yeah. And that's what you get for us to hear today. So
that's why I'm stuttering really. Like when I'm going through there is because the night before my performance has decreased mentally and physically for sure too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well,
big news.
Yeah, big news. Nate, we have done a bunch of different races as like a podcast before. We've done, we did single track 6. That one didn't end well. You broke your frame.
With my knee, I swear.
I got concussed. It was rough. We did Levi's Gran Fondo.
That was good.
That was good for us. Yeah. We had a good day. Man, we've had single track 6. I've talked about Oceanside 70.3, another one I've done.
Cape Epic wasn't good.
How did I forget? Cape Epic.
Leadville's went well.
Leadville. It's been a long time since we've done a podcast challenge race like this. Oh my gosh, that may be the biggest one. Yeah.
That didn't go as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I still am so curious about what you would have been able to do. We're going to talk about another race that we're doing, by the way.
For those who don't know, we had a 40K TT challenge, and I was going super aero, doing everything I could. And the Newton meters on a certain one was something crazy like 15. Yeah. And I put it down to 4 Newton meters. And I realized during the ride that my handlebars were not connected to my steerer tube, and they were off angled in the middle of the ride.
Not what you want to do when you're in the aero position out in front of that. That's not the feeling you want to have.
It was so scary. In the aero bars. So check your bolts, people. And that's why you've seen in comments on a lot of my stuff says check your bolts. That's why.
Yeah. Worst nightmare sort of stuff. We put it out to a vote, and between podcast voting on Spotify, between voting on the forum, go check it out, TrainerRoad.com/forum. Peaks Challenge in Falls Creek was the one that won. So that's Falls Creek, Victoria, Australia.
Jonathan's going to Australia.
I'm going down under.
Last time I went to Australia, it was so much fun. I rode with some people. The riding there is like Switzerland or Austria, Switzerland, right?
That level.
And then Hawaii.
Wow.
It's a perfectly smooth ride. So like you're going through, it's amazing.
Where were you at? What city? Sydney. So I think I'm going to be flying into Melbourne for this one. At least that's what it seems like is the best approach. Australians, please jump into the comments right now. Let me know everything I'm getting wrong. Let me know everything I need to know, because I would appreciate all the information. Peaks Challenge is like really gnarly. Also, you mentioned like Australia is really good for riding. I feel like every Australian is fast. It's probably my perception. I don't know.
It's because the fast ones come here.
Okay, yeah.
You know, the fast pros. Yeah, but no, they were fast in general. We did that Heron Park. What's it called?
Yep. Yeah. They do like
Yeah.
crit things there. Yeah.
They're fast, and it's on like a,
It's like a bike path.
It's a bike path. Like I can almost reach across it with a crit
It's
with
so
like
gnarly.
30 people. Yeah, you
Can't
guys are
imagine.
all intense, and everything can kill you there. So don't pet the animals.
I gotta admit, like I was thinking in my own, I'm like, I hope it's like the north of Australia, where like the spiders are the size of dogs or something. That's terrifying to me. But
Huntsman.
I kind of want
You know the huntsman spider?
No, I don't.
Oh my God. Okay.
Are they everywhere?
We put this on there. Keep talking, John.
Okay.
I'll show you.
Yeah. I just want the real Aussie experience. I want a kangaroo, come face to face with a roo, see a koala, that sort of thing. So, but Peaks Challenge is a hard Oh my.
Clock spider.
Oh my God.
We can put this on, Rob, but the huntsman spider, they are harmless, but they are
we sure?
giant. Yeah, for sure. They are giant. Like Australians are like, oh, they're cute and they like them. They kill other like dangerous animals.
Spiders.
Yeah, or insects and stuff.
They kill their snakes too. They've got like poisonous everything.
I don't know about that. That would be crazy.
Y'all are
spider.
crazy, and I can't believe you're alive. It's
Please
like
tell us tips on this, like, because they all know
yeah, exactly.
about what they can touch and what they can't.
Yeah.
And two, Australians are always like Peaks Challenge.
It's the one they talk about. It's 146 miles or 235 kilometers. That's a long ride. But then get this, 16,500 feet of climbing or 5,000 meters of climbing.
That's a lot.
That's huge. And the crazy part is it kind of, there is one small climb relatively small climb called Toowoomba Gap, but then it's really two climbs that you get that. Like
2 climbs.
Yeah, it's 2 main climbs. Now there's a lot of like undulation in one of them where you pick up a lot of elevation coming down it. Actually, it's one of those things where it looks like a descent, but I don't think it is. And shout out to Chris Miller, by the way. I watched your content. This is really helpful to see of the race to kind of get some context. Can we go through this thing here? Because my goal is, I looked at this and I'm trying to get oriented, and they ask you when you sign up. I signed up already, and they ask you when you sign up, like, what do you think your average finish time will be? And I'm not a guesser, I'm a calculator. So like, of course, went to Best Bike Split and I ran all the numbers and did everything else. And my goal is to finish, and I know Australians, let me know if this is unrealistic. My goal is to finish in 7 hours and 45 minutes. To put that
that means nothing to me.
To put that in context, it'd be 19 miles an hour or 30.4 kilometers per hour that I'd have to average. Keep in mind that this race, again, is 16,000 feet of climbing.
What's the, what percentile would that be like in the results?
I think that it would put me, so last year it was this is another big thing. Last year it was so hot. It was like 110 degrees. And they were like, I saw footage of people just like walking their bikes up this climb and it averages like 10% for 6 miles.
43 Celsius.
It's so hot. So it was super hot. And I think that looking at previous year's results, that would put me around top 10, maybe even top 5 in my age group. In my age group.
Oh, top 10 in your age group.
Yep.
Okay.
In terms of percentage across the field, I don't know. I'd have to export the spreadsheet and then run the numbers, basically.
Well, that 19 miles per hour too, can you do that in kilometers?
Yeah,
so people
it's
know?
about 30.4 kilometers per hour.
It's draft legal, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm guessing, even though those 2 long climbs, I'm guessing there's some kind of, well, describe it, because there's the descent at the first.
You start with the descent. That's, for us in our region, we have a very big climb right here from the office, Mount Rose, and might have seen on Phil Guyman's stuff and stuff. It's that long going down, and it's like similar elevation drop too that you do, and that's how you start the ride.
Well,
it's gonna, and you have to start with lights on the front, lights on the back. It's not neutral, by the way, the descent. It's just wide open, like gun goes off, and then you just go.
I'm guessing then you have to line up early.
That's
how many
exactly
people do this?
My thought. Like over 3,000 people.
Okay, everyone. John is super good descender. I swear to God, let him up front and just like be safe. Let him have a good ride.
This sounds terrifying to me. When I heard that, I was like, oh gosh, it starts with the descent. Now I think that they waive it and the timing doesn't start until you cross the start line. But that introduces a totally separate issue, right? In the sense that if you're doing a waived start, that means that there's less likelihood that you'll be with a group all throughout the day. like.
How do you choose by what your finish time is?
Exactly. So I put that my finish time would be 8 hours because that was like, I think the lowest option. And I think that from what I've heard, they put you in the front there. Like you're like, it's kind of like 7 to 8.
That's good.
Go here. So it should be helpful.
No one's going to drop you descending.
It's a 20-mile descent and you drop 3,900 feet or almost 1,200 meters. It's going to be super odd because I've done actual road races. Like the Sea Otter road race is a really common one where you actually start with a descent, but they neutralize it and they roll you down at a controlled pace and then they let it go. That's probably better on that descent. That one's really sketchy, but this will be totally new for me to start a road race with a 20-mile descent.
Why can't they just start at the bottom of the descent?
Because you finish in the same spot and it's like a mountain town. So like, you know,
Still,
you
I
drop
would just
down.
be like, take a bus down there or get down there, you know?
I agree. Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. And then here's the tricky part from mile 20 to 25. Once you get down that descent, there's like a relatively short, it's really not that short, just short compared to the other climbs, 4.6 mile or 7.4 kilometer climb. And you climb 1,500 feet or 485 meters, but it averages 6%. So that's selective. That's going to be hard. And I can only imagine the pace is going to be so high because everyone has all these nerves. They just descended.
You want to get in a good group.
And then the race is 146 miles. And you do want to get in a good group because it's after that, it's kind of like a long 0 to like 1.5% drag to get to the real proper first climb.
Yeah. And I would say good group if you're really trying to like get a really good time. I personally would just pace it and just be with I am who I am.
It's got to be the smarter choice. Like even if I'm trying to, like if I try to stick with people, I'll blow up. Like it'll just be too much.
There'll be 5 watt per kilo people with you.
Exactly.
You're not going to be able to, They'll be going at 80%.
Yeah.
And you would be 90 or 95.
As we've already covered, every Australian is fast. So
True.
they're going to be super fast and going super hard.
Wait, so you have the lights.
Yeah.
Can you ditch those lights? Because lights are heavy.
Yeah, they're not light. Or they're
Like
not heavy.
afterwards?
Or sorry, they're not light. Like it's going to have an impact.
Because you carried them for 16,000 feet of climbing.
I know.
Is there some like, I wonder if there's an aid station or someplace that you can like give someone a light after that?
So there's like a drop station, but they say, and we'll gladly accept any kit you want to drop as a donation. So like, I don't know if I want to donate lights and kit and that sort of thing. I've got to figure that out. One good note about this is the roads are closed, which is really cool. I don't know if it's like a rotating closure. I hope I'm fast enough to stay on the closed road the whole time.
You are.
But it's going to be, that first climb is going to be super hard. I will probably be carrying the lights. In terms of nutrition, we'll go into that later, but I'll also be carrying like carb mix with me as well.
There's stations that you can like drops for yourself, or how do you?
It doesn't look like there's stations where I can pick up my own bottles, but there are water stations. So with like food and other stuff like that. But I think I'm going to have to bring the powder, put it in my bottles, shake, and then take off.
Yeah.
For each one.
How many grams of carbs per hour are you going for?
120 is what I've done well with before on big days. I just have to train up to that. Because right now, if I took in 90 grams an hour and I did it for like 3 hours, I think that my tummy would be okay I went over that.
You're a dad. You have kids.
Sorry. My stomach would be all right. If I went over that, then I think it would be bad as of now. So I just got to work my way up to that. It's kind of tough to do.
Yeah, that's part of the training, right? And
it is.
With a 8-hour race, that is like very, very important.
So long. The big climb, Mount Hotham, that one's 17.85 miles or 28.7 kilometers long. You climb 4,455 feet or 1,357 meters. It's basically Mount Rose. But for us locally, it's like, we have a very close proxy that I'm used to. But the first 6.5 miles or 10.5 kilometers are at 6.5%. So it's after that, it drops down in pitch and it undulates quite a lot, but it has kind of a wall at the bottom where it's consistently steep.
What kind of gearing are you going to use?
So I've been using 52-36 in the front and then a 10-33 in the back. And it's been great for almost everything.
That's a wide range.
It is a wide range. And I think that we'll get to a climb here in a bit where I will be geared out. But I think that looking at the course, I don't want to be spinning out and I don't want to be spinning at 120 RPM. That's one thing that like people don't talk about often, the cramp sort of things that can come up on an 8-hour race like this. If you're spinning at a super high cadence and that's not normal for you, like that's the sort of thing that can, it's a different stimulus for your muscles. And I don't want to go out and spend time spinning at 120 RPM all day to get used to that. So I think I'll be geared out on one climb, but I think it'll be a good choice for what I have. That climb though, after that, it's like I'm
reading ahead.
Yeah, it's a lumpy false flat descent from mile 63 to 103. Actually, Chris Miller was the one that mentioned, he's like, it looks like a descent. It does not feel like a descent. It's like, it's like, you're just constantly, it's like rolling and if you're with a group, it's great. And that's the key thing is I feel like from 63 all the way to the next climb, which is at mile 123. So for 60 miles there, if I'm alone, I am going to just get I'm going to bleed time, and it's going to be really hard to meet my goal. Yeah. Really hard.
And two of those, like you said, it's kind of the rolling one. That's where if you're in a group 2 and they surge on those rolling ones, don't surge.
Please don't surge. If I'm in your group with you, please don't surge.
Yeah.
Oh. The Falls Creek climb is 120 mile 123 to 137. It's 14 miles or 22 and a half kilometers, so a massive climb still. It only climbs almost half as much, 2,330 feet or 710 meters. So the average is 5.4%, but it's like extremely hot there at that point. Once you kind of get down low and then you're climbing up from there.
Yeah.
Extremely hot. There's a headwind that's often on the climb, but it averages 9.5%, almost 10% for the first 5.6 miles or 9 kilometers.
Am I right? Is this the race where they a lot of people walk a certain section?
Yeah.
There's like a huge wall, right?
Yeah.
But there's a huge section that's really steep.
This is it. And people, because of the heat, because of how deep you are into the race, everything else, it's not uncommon for from what I understand from last year when it was really hot, most people were walking.
If it's 5 miles, 9K walking?
In cycling shoes?
The 9.5 average, there must be points higher than 9.5.
There is. I saw up to 13% and that sort of thing.
Can you use an e-bike?
That's a good question. No one needs to know.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
It's going to be really hard.
So, the first one that everyone's going to think about is weight of your bike and besides you, weight of everything else.
Yeah.
What kind of wheels would you use?
Well, here's the hard thing. I wonder if that's a lot of elevation gain, but it's also a lot of distance and it's also a lot of high speed.
19 miles per hour.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I have NV SES 4.5s right now. Uh-huh. They weigh 1,400 grams, so they're not the lightest. My mountain bike wheels are lighter, for example. But they are aerodynamically efficient and they're fast. If I kept those on there and kept my bike as is today, but put race tires on, it would be 16 pounds.
Oh, that's dope.
So it's light.
That's really light.
And I think that it's good enough for what I would need. If I wanted to get really weight weenie about it, I could put on shallow wheels and I could go with something like that, but I'd rather not. I also like the confidence I have in my bike in descending. It really changes when you throw different wheels on there.
Yeah, you like stiff wheels, right?
No, I like ones that are just predictable, and predictable can come from a lot of different things. Yeah. And Rovals I never found to be predictable. They're kind of springy feeling. They felt really light and fast when you were climbing. I'm not sure if they actually were, but they feel that way, but they're not as predictable descending. So I'm not going to change much on my bike. I like how it's set up. The only thing I am going to change is I'm going to change the tires out. So right now I have 35s on there, which is crazy. And they're big fat Mondos from Specialized. They're not fast tires, but they're great for training. I usually use NV's normal tires because I've really liked those. I can't ride Continentals without getting a flat. It seems like they just flat all the time on me. The GP 5000 from Continental is the benchmark tire that a lot of people go to. But if I use NV's race day tire, I'll save 100 grams total. That's not insignificant. That's a quarter of a pound. It's 100 grams total on the tires, but then they're 4 watts faster overall than the GP 5000s as well. And those things feel so sticky. And in terms of flat prevention, I don't want to take them off road, but they're fine. They're like a race tire. And I think I'm okay with using that.
I think too, that doesn't freeze here. When I rode there, the roads were pristine. And please, people, let us know what the roads are like.
It gets snowy up there.
Oh, it does. So there could be some freezing.
And everything else.
Oh, yeah, it goes so high. I forgot about that.
Yeah. But that's actually another point. The elevation, I'm actually going to have a 3% increase in my FTP, my practical FTP.
The bottom?
No, just an average elevation.
Oh.
Because where we're at, we're actually our average elevation here is the top of where they're at. So I'm dropping down, going down there, which will be nice. That's a helpful perk about it. To do that pace though, I need to hold 280 average on climbs, 215 average on the flats. That really comes down to being 225 AP for average power, 240 normalized power. That's what Best Bike Split says would deliver me to that time. That's 3.1 watts per kilogram, to put it in context. It'd be about 75% of my FTP after altitude adjustment. I wouldn't be able to do that for 8 hours right now, but I've also got fitness improvements, which we'll talk about in just a bit, to get. But then also hopefully closer to 70%. And if it's at 70%, that actually is something that in the data I think I could do.
Is that 70%? the altitude adjustment or with the fitness improvement?
With the altitude or with the fitness improvement and the altitude adjustment, it would be 70%.
What's your FTP now?
291 just went up, by the way, thanks to FTP detection and consistent training.
And you want to get to 305?
That would be a dream. Like, I think I could do it. I shouldn't say that would be a dream. I think I can do that. Like a dream would be 310, back to like my 310, 315. But I don't think I can do that with the amount I can train right now and life and everything else.
Yeah, you have a...
We're sleep training my daughter right now. And it's
how many
intensive
sleep
program.
Did you get last night?
3 hours.
3 hours.
So it's hard. Right now I weigh 156 pounds or 70.8 kilos. That was this morning. I'd like to be under 150 pounds or 68 kilograms, and that's possible for me. Like, I'm taking creatine right now. I think that if I got off creatine, I'd probably lose. What I've noticed is like, it was like 3 pounds, I think, with creatine.
So you did all the triathlon with swimming and stuff. And I think that once you just ride for a few months and don't pick anything up with your kids, like, you'll just naturally drop that weight. Not having to like diet, just train a bunch, like we talked about. Train a bunch, do that, and not lift any weights, and you'll kind of lose a couple pounds upper body too.
Here's the training plan I'm doing. It'll be 8.5 hours per week. That's what Plan Builder recommends for me right now, and I'm going to be following that. I will be testing kind of a new thing that we're working on too. So it won't be exactly perhaps what people have right now, but just the same. It recommends 8.5 hours per week. What that ends up looking like for me is 5 days of training per week. That's 2 days of endurance, 1 to 2 days of sweet spot, and 1 to 2 days of threshold or VO2. And then that's basically, it has me doing base from October when I started. I did a short little build, and then it's back to base right now. I'm doing base until early January, then build until February 10th, and then specialty until the event.
When's the event?
It's March 9th.
March 9th. So you have just under 3 months?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just about 12 weeks.
That's good. That's like a solid amount of training time that you're not getting super burned out.
Yes.
You can but you can also have big fitness improvements in 12 weeks.
So I think that I'm confident with that. I know everyone's thinking 8.5 hours, that's how long it might take you to do the race. Like, and like, yes, that is true. But it is super important principle that not enough people talk about is you don't train to go and do something that's super long. I can't just change everything in my life and about my body to be able to tolerate doing that sort of thing in a routine manner. It doesn't work. That's not the best way for me to get faster. Instead, the best way for me to get faster is to meet me where I'm at and then to step up from there. So within that, the weekend rides, right now it's recommending 2 hours. And one of the things that we're testing is those are probably going to be expanding in duration as time goes on and we get closer to it. But you won't see me out there doing an 8.5 hour ride prior to this. The
recovery would just be too long.
Yeah, it would just make it so that the next 2 to 3 weeks would be, in a best case scenario, depressed in terms of my ability to adapt to training. But in reality, it probably would just throw me off completely and put me in a hole.
Mm-hmm.
For weight, here's how I'm going to be managing the weight side of things. So training fuel, making sure that, it's super easy for all of us to do like a 30-minute endurance ride even and think, I don't need to feel anything. And it's true, you don't need to. But I want to fuel my endurance work at least 60 grams per hour. If an FTP of 291, and if I'm just riding around at 50% of FTP, that's still, I'm burning a significant amount of calories, even just with the 30-minute endurance ride. So it's easy then to go throughout the rest of the day, get starving, and then find myself with a whole thing of EL fudge cookies or something later on in the evening. So it's super important to fuel that work. And I'll be fueling the endurance and tempo stuff at least 60 grams per hour. Sweet spot and above, definitely at 90 grams an hour or above, right? And then this is a big thing that I've thought about recently. It's super, Nate, like after a ride, when you just crave a burger and like fries or like some like big thing like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of the calories from that come from protein and fat, when in reality, so many of the calories you just burned on that big training ride came from carbs. It's really easy to, if you just look at it from a calorie perspective, to finish those rides and just to go and say, I burned, 6,000 calories on that ride, huge ride. And as a result, I can have, 4 meals from 5 Guys or something. And that's like enough calories. But in reality, you're not actually replenishing the carbs that you need. And that carb replenishment is super key in order to keep training consistently. So for me, a principle that I want to follow is fully replace training calories from sweet spot and above sessions with carbs. Like, be very focused on that. I'll probably be doing that with all of them, but I really want to make sure that I'm doing that with the above, the ones that are higher intensity and above. when I have done that in the past, it makes tomorrow so much easier. And that's like the main thing that will enable me to train better. Also stop me from getting sick as often. That's like a key thing too. If you deprive yourself of carbs, immune system is usually one of the first things that gets compromised.
Yeah. So your kids are in school.
They are. I'll just pull them out of school for 3 months.
Yeah. That's the hard part.
Yeah, it is. It is. Especially one in a toddler age program too.
Yeah.
So it's really tough. She just mainlines every child's sickness into my face with her. She's still cute enough to hold. So then I'll be measuring food for 5 days at the beginning of every month. I can't do it consistently. It just adds too much stress to my life. But what I found is that when I check in, it does end up working out pretty well. And then I'll make sure that I'm consuming at least 1,850 non-training calories every day. That puts me in roughly like a 250 calorie deficit. But again, that's non-training calories. I'll replace all of the training calories. We did an episode on on calculating your energy availability and a video actually on that. I'll link to that below and you can see how I've laid all this out. It gives me a macro percentage of 62, 21, 16. And I'll be making sure I get 2.2 grams per kilogram of protein when I can, or higher when I can. And then just eat heavy on veg and whole grains, fruits, and cut out processed foods. That's all.
That's all. I'm
That's
doing
all the
some
stuff.
math with your stuff.
Now, there is one thing that I want to, if you're doing the math on that stuff, I'll wait before I get into this because I have some other questions on the bike nutrition that I kind of want to figure out. Namely, the liquid side. I don't feel like I sweat the same that I used to. Like, I feel like I'm sweating more and that I also lose more sodium. I've seen more salt stains back when I got tested last with Precision Fuel and Hydration.
Mm-hmm.
I see more salt stains on my kit than I have before then. So I kind of want to go get that tested and I want to see what I'm losing to then know how much I need to replenish. And then I think I'm going to try to take 400 milligrams of caffeine throughout the day. That's a huge amount of caffeine for me. Like that's a lot.
No way.
But if I'm taking it in through Run Gum on an 8.5 hour day, we'll have to see how it
that
goes.
day. I think meant every day.
No.
I was like,
no.
Bro.
No, on race day. I think that taking it in through Run Gum gives it a lot more of a steady hit, doesn't mess up my gut. And then if I can take that in, that's basically looks like me taking in 8 tablets or 8 little pieces of gum throughout the day. Usually a piece of gum lasts somewhere between like 20 minutes to 30 minutes and then I spit it out. If I just take one every hour, then I should be okay. I'll make sure I train that though, because otherwise I don't want to find myself shaking and dehydrated.
And he means spit it out into his pocket. Yeah.
yes, sure.
Yeah. So you want my opinion?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Where am I missing the holes?
I think maybe you're being a little too calculated on each training day's like fuel and more aim at like, I love the 2.2 for the protein and that puts you at 150, I just lost my windows, 150 grams of protein per day. And then for the carbs, I would just every day, even rest days, go for 6 grams per kilogram
of carbs.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that equals about 408. So they have 400 every day.
Yeah.
And I think you'll be set. That together with that protein and that and the carbs is like 2,200 calories.
Yeah.
And then the rest is just fat, and because you're going to burn way more than that.
Yeah.
And you could have extra carbs in that, and you probably will on your really long days. Mm-hmm. But I think just hitting that 6 every day, especially with research, and I think 6 is doable, but 6 is like you have to be very concerted about it.
It's hard.
Like that 9 that some of those like world class people do it's
so hard.
It's almost. I remember I tried to do it. You got to eat a lot of processed food and juice or something like that. It's really hard to do through Whole Foods.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's helpful to separate like the on the bike carbs from the off the bike carbs to be able to figure all this stuff out, and on
the bike carbs is a really like important place to like to have them.
Yes, exactly. And take
train
as many as I can. So yeah, it's hard. Like, I think that the main things, like you have a lot of sub goals, but then in the end, if you just make sure that you're getting enough protein, you make sure you're not getting enough carbs, then I think you're in a good spot.
And the fat kind of takes care of itself.
It does.
And if you're hungry,
if you're not eating processed foods, it does. If you're eating processed foods, it's tough because a lot of them sneak in a lot of fat. You know what I mean? Like
you're right. And if you, so then if you're hungry, I would just eat more like carby snacks, a little bit of more proteins is probably not going to help very much.
Yeah.
2.2 is already the high end, but just add more carbs and juice and that sort of thing. Bagels.
Yeah. I like the protein side. It's pretty like, for me, one thing that I found like an easy quick meal is like you have rice, you have some tuna, and then throw in some sriracha, throw in some sesame seeds or something like that. Throw in some, if you want, like if this is actually a meal, then you throw in spring mix or something. Yeah. But if you just do that, that's something that's going to be like not fatty, not too fatty, depending on the tuna that you're using, but it's not going to be too fatty. It's going to be something that breaks down pretty quick and you can take that in. Mm-hmm. And that's like a decent, like small thing if you need to bridge with meals or prep. So yeah, it's going to be really hard to do that. Looking at some really, really fast cyclists, they're doing last year, I think Chris Miller, that guy, he's an incredible cyclist. He did 7:15, I think. And that was with the crazy heat. I bet without the crazy heat, probably would have been like 7 or sub 7 probably. So for me to do 7:45 would be really tough. But, putting it in context of power, that's 3.1 watts per kilogram for 8.5 hours. That's, it would be a power PR for me. I've never done something that long at that power. The only thing I've done that long is, I have Everested before, if you didn't know, Nate, but the other one was Leadville, but you're up at 10,000 feet. So your power is not high. Like my highest power there is 190. That was what I did for Leadville. And that was for 8 hours and 15 minutes. So, looking here, I don't know, we'll have to see what we can do. It'd be a huge reach to get to 7:45, but that's the goal. That's what I want to go for. Am I crazy? I don't know.
Yes. The only other thing I don't like about this is the weight goal, because I know just knowing you, getting in your head, that's better, and like reducing some other thing, because
that's a big scare for me, and that's why like even like when I'm like really focusing on making sure that I fuel those workouts, because I'm worried about missing. And I'm worried about my own psychology taking over. I bet this is relatable to people. And you get into spots where you start rationalizing and justifying skipping eating when you shouldn't. It's a hard thing.
And what's best.
It's true.
But then, I wouldn't weigh yourself very often or at all.
It's probably a good point. Like,
throw away your scale.
As soon as when I look at this, like, I think of like power and weight. And that's like the main thing. It's probably what we all go toward. And I should know better. It's funny because I advised otherwise,
all the time, right? And I swear, you do this much training and you just eat the non-processed foods, like you're not eating McDonald's and all that.
That's right.
It is going to be, your body composition is going to improve.
It'll be optimized. Whatever it is optimized.
It's just going to happen. And then just one of those days where you miss something and you train fasted, and then you combine that with sick, and you've just lost like 2.5 weeks.
Yeah. And then there's
like progress.
Yeah. And that's majoring in the minor, like thing, that whole thing where it's like, minoring in the major, majoring in the minor. That's a great example of me like missing the whole point. And the point is to get faster, and that comes through sustainable fuel. And
John's been 138 racing?
Yeah. 138 was the lightest I've been. And that was like pretty unhealthy. And like looking back at it, practicing a lot of like disordered eating, for sure at that point. And my power was not high. I think that I was only like 275 then, 270. And now, I've been higher watt per kg since then, at higher weights. And so, but right now, I think part of it is age too. Like, every year you get a little bit heavier, and that's just kind of normal for a lot of people. But when I see that, and then I think I have this big goal to take on with like a lot of people paying attention to it and everything else, I think I gotta get down. That's like the first thing that comes to my mind,
Yeah.
But I shouldn't do it.
John already has, like, if you can see him, he's already a lean person. And I think your FTP can get to 305 or above.
I think so
like
too.
If you don't focus on the weight part.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do that. Everybody let me know what I should do.
Throw away your scale.
Yeah. Let me know if I should throw it away.
It'd be amazing if you didn't weigh himself once and then you weighed yourself race in the morning.
And I'm 150.
No, it says 178.
Yeah, it's super fast though.
Yeah.
By the way, we talked about this before, but scale idea. Somebody with these smart scales, why in the world don't you make it so that you don't see the number and instead you just see like a smoothed long duration trend? Like, I feel like that would be probably way healthier for people. Like, if you're getting body composition and that sort of thing, you could just say your body composition is improving. and your weight is following this trend or something. Like that would be way better than giving me a number, because that number is going to freak me out. So it's going to be exciting. I can't wait to do it. It's going to be it's Australia's, I think Australia's biggest Gran Fondo. It's one of the biggest in the world. It's like one of the highest recommended. It's super competitive at the front, and I hope to see some of you there. If you're doing it, let me know. If you have tips on where to stay, tips on where to eat, all that sort of stuff. Oh, a bike shop in Melbourne. Because one of the things that I've learned is I'm probably going to fly with my race tires off my bike and then like bring some sealant. And then that way, like, because things happen in the plane and cold air, and with that long, it's a 16-hour flight. So with that long of a flight, that's a lot. And it's probably best to just find a bike shop and have them mount them up for me in Melbourne. So bike shops in Melbourne, let me know. That would be really good to find out. It's going to be exciting. And after that, it's all triathlon, Nate.
Great.
It's going to be great. Thanks for joining us, everybody. If you want us to analyze your TrainerRoad career, or if you don't use TrainerRoad and you just want to ask us how you could get faster, let us know. You can submit those questions at trainerroad.com/podcast. Put them down in the comments below on Spotify or YouTube. If you listened to this episode and you're like, this didn't make a whole lot of sense because I didn't see things, go watch it on YouTube or Spotify. That's the way to do it. And we will talk to you all next week. Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.